as possible to reach settlement on any outstanding issues. There I am. To reach settlement on any outstanding issues that may occur. So we're working with all parties to make it as uncontested of a transaction as possible.
Thank you. Any additional questions for Chris? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Jason, is there a second?
Second.
Second by
Thank
Jeff.
you.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Moving on, we have a series of neighborhoods where we're going to be contemplating the installation of small cell facilities. I want to thank the residents for being here today and apologize for the wait. We had to get through some other official business first. But just so everyone's kind of clear on the process, Tammy will be coming forward and sharing basically a summary of the interactions between the telecom industry and the residents so that the board is aware of what's transpired to date. And then the board will weigh and consider the locations and listen to the residents and their concerns. So with that, Tammy, we'll go ahead and move forward with the first one is a request to approve residential waiver to install a small cell facility in Canyon Ridge.
For the record, Tammy Houston, Assistant Engineer. Before you, Verizon has submitted two permits for residential waiver in Canyon Ridge. We spoke with Verizon and the HOA for Canyon Ridge on two occasions, one back in November and then again in July. The one in November was prior to Verizon pulling all of their permits at that time and putting a pause on those. During the initial conversation, the HOA had suggested a couple of revised locations for their small cell structures, and Verizon was able to accommodate those changes. So before you today is there's two permits, 3 locations. The HOA and Verizon are in agreement with these 3 proposed locations, and Verizon Wireless is here to answer any questions that you may have.
So just so we clarify here, when we say we have 2 permits and 3 locations, can we delineate here what we're approving? And just so we understand, are we approving all 3 locations? And if we approve the 3rd one, does that permit still come back to the board for final approval?
It does. So the 2 permits will be before you today for official approval. Giving approval to all 3 locations will allow that permit to come back on more of a consent agenda resolution to be brought before you.
Okay.
Because there's a shot clock with respect to those permits being issued.
Right. Is there anyone here from Canyon Ridge today? Seeing none, close the public comment period of this particular consideration. Is there any questions from the board? No. Seeing none, is there a motion?
Motion.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Jeff, second by Jason. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to a request to approve residential waiver to install a small cell facility in Cherry Hill Farms. Tammy?
Again, Tammy Houston, Assistant Engineer. Verizon Wireless has submitted 3 permits for 3 locations within Cherry Hill Farms. We spoke with Verizon and the HOA on 2 separate occasions, again in November prior to Verizon's pause, and then again here in July. One of the locations, the 11549 Cherry Hill Boulevard, that one was in discussion on relocation. The HOA had suggested several different locations for Verizon to go into the medians or closer to the intersection, the entrance. Verizon was able to accommodate that relocation to the south median at the entrance. Then the HOA and Verizon are amenable to all 3 locations. Again, Verizon is here to answer any questions if you have any on the locations.
Is there anyone here from Cherry Hill Farms that would like to speak? Seeing none, it does seem like there's a significant improvement in those locations from the revised ones, so I appreciate Verizon working with the HOA to find alternative locations. If there is no remonstration or comments, I'll ask for a motion.
Make a motion.
Motion by Jeff, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jason, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to Harrison Green. Tammy?
Tammy Houston, Assistant Engineer. Verizon has submitted 3 permits for 3 structures within Harrison Green. We did speak with the HOA on 2 occasions. Back in November was through email. They had no suggestions at that time. When we spoke with them in July, there was one location that a resident presented that they would like to have revised to a property line or across the street to another property line. That location
The
was
13744.
Verizon did take a look at both suggestions, and they were able to revise the location to be placed on the northern property line between the 2 properties. The HOA and that affected resident and Verizon are all amenable to these locations. Verizon is available for any questions.
Is there anyone here from Harrison Green? Any questions from the team? Again, it looks like that moving that one pole is a significant improvement from line of sight for the homeowner, so I do appreciate Verizon's willingness to adjust. Is there a motion for Harrison Green?
Motion.
Motion by Jason, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jeff, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Moving on to Lantern Farms. Tammy?
Tammy Houston, Assistant Engineer. Verizon Wireless has submitted 2 permits for waivers for small cell structures within Lantern Farms. We met with the HOA back in December and then again in July after Verizon's pause. One location, the 8670 Lantern Farms Drive, was discussed at the initial meeting in December and again in July for verification. The HOA had requested that it be moved to the median to replace one of the existing streetlights at that median. Verizon was able to make that change. The HOA and Verizon are in agreement with the proposed locations, and Verizon is here to answer any questions.
Is there anyone here from Lantern Farms? Seeing none, are there any questions from the board? If not, I will entertain a motion.
Motion.
Motion by Jeff, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jason, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Next is a request to approve a residential waiver to install a small cell facility in Lantern Overlook. Tammy?
Tammy Houston, Assistant Engineer. Verizon has submitted for one permit for residential waiver for a small cell in Lantern Overlook. We met with the HOA back in November and again in July. During both conversations, there were several different suggestions that were brought up by the HOA for relocation of the small cell structure. There were suggestions of adding another small cell structure and placing them within both islands in the median areas. Verizon was not amenable to that because they would be too close together and they would interfere with each other. Conversations were had about moving the tower to the east to be near the end of the sidewalk there on the south side. Verizon stated they would not be able to service the back half of that cul-de-sac with that location.
So just so I'm clear, moving to the east would be towards the road, towards
Correct.
Lantern Road?
Correct.
Okay.
The HOA and Verizon were not able to come to an agreement on a proposed location. Verizon is here to answer any questions that you may have.
Great. I know we have some folks here from Lantern Overlook. Anyone that would like to share their concerns?
You do have people here from Lantern.
Yeah, that's what I just said. I know we have some. So if you'd like to share your concerns, feel free to step up to the microphone. You can just share your name and address and then your concerns.
We probably have several, so I'll let our
Okay.
main person go first.
All right, great. Thank you.
Main person. Hi.
Hi.
I'm Rhonda Stahl. I am the Lantern Overlook HOA president, and I live at 8520 Shoe Overlook Drive. I am right across the street from the proposed tower location. I live on a street of 26 homes in arguably one of the most unique and beautiful neighborhoods in Fishers. We have a stretch on the south side of Shoe Overlook of about 600 feet that we refer to as a nature preserve. It is unbuildable land with woods, a creek, and wetlands. Our association has been maintaining this preserve for the past 30 years with lawn mowing, tree trimming, and weed control. It is a precious stretch of land that residents and, and visitors enjoy year-round. Unfortunately, in my opinion, for fishers, for our neighborhood, and for me personally, it is within this preserve that Verizon has chosen as the ideal location for their 5G tower on our street. I'm here to implore the city to deny this location because it's a beautiful and undeveloped area of the city and our neighborhood, and the tower will blemish the beauty of this treasured land for personal reasons. Verizon's ideal location is right across the street from my family's home. Centered in front of the window of every window of my house. We can't look out the front of our windows without seeing this tower in what would otherwise be nothing but a natural scene. I've heard the city communicate repeatedly that if possible, it would be their intent that homeowners wouldn't see one of these towers looking out their front porch or front windows. But if this site is chosen, we will. I understand the challenge of these tower locations. I've been intimately involved for the past 60 days, meeting with people I've never met before to fight for what's aesthetically best for our neighborhood. I also understand the need for technology. I just don't believe this is the best solution for every neighborhood, especially mine. I'm asking Fishers to deny this proposed location.
Thank you. Anyone else that would wish to speak? Ma'am?
My name is Sharon Martin. I'm at 8540 Shoe Overlook Drive, and I've been a resident there for almost 24 years. When I heard that Verizon was coming into our area, I saw the proposed location. I live next to Rhonda, so the tower would be to the right diagonal from my home. I had a question the last time we had a meeting about whether or not any trees would have to be removed or trimmed as a result of where they're putting the tower, because with it being in our wooded area, there are very mature, tall trees. The creek runs there, and the answer that was given on that call was Verizon is not in the tree trimming or tree cutting business. Now, I don't know what kind of answer that is to a question of whether or not Verizon plans to remove or trim trees. If they put a tower there, if they feel that their signal is going to be hindered, they will do what they want to do to remedy that. So I think we need to know what Verizon would do with those trees in that area. Also, during that last call, they said that Verizon would not be putting a tower near water, woods, and in wooded areas, and that location is all that was mentioned in that conversation. So I was like, how did that location get picked if what they say they're not going to do, they're doing it in all these situations? Now, I can tell you, Verizon coming into our neighborhood, the coming up with 2 towers was a result of, well, we need coverage, or they say we need coverage, so trying to get that coverage and putting it in 2 locations. I can tell you, we do not want 2 locations, all right? And one of the proposed 2 locations would be even closer to my home and my view from my sunroom. So yes, I wouldn't want that either. Now, I know we're not talking about any issues about health, so I just want that on the record that that's not being discussed, because we've been told we're not discussing that. So I'm not going to go there, but I certainly have issues with that as well. Now, Verizon also needs to know they really need to work with us on the location of this, because I am ready to start marching on Lantern Road saying no to Verizon. I've already checked to see if I need a permit, and I have been told no. So we're ready to do some advocating for our neighborhood.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else that'd like to speak? Yes, come on up.
Hi, I'm Lisa Sells. I'm the treasurer of Lantern Overlook at 8420. In addition to the concern about removal of trees, we'd like to guarantee that that's not going to happen. The other concern, which is probably more of a future, something to keep in mind, is I asked over a year ago, if we get one of these towers, are we going to suddenly get a forest of towers? And that question has not been answered until the mayor's breakfast, where I heard that, yes, it's true that once Verizon puts a tower here, that AT&T could be next and ask for 150 feet away. The tower itself would only host 2 of these, I don't know what to call them, antenna on the top. My request is that if we do get one of these, is there not a way to ask for the companies to have to share this or rent from each other or something? Because we have a very beautiful neighborhood. We don't want this to become a tower, a forest of these poles. So that's my additional comment, in addition to I support what Rhonda and Sharon have said. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that'd like to speak on this neighborhood? Thank you for your comments. I know how difficult this can be and how it can tear a neighborhood apart as people try to find the best solutions in a difficult situation. I do want to allow Verizon to answer a couple of the questions that have been asked. First, I'd like to have Chris on the question of requiring co-location. Can you speak to that from a law or legal perspective?
Sure. So while we can't guarantee it, it's certainly a requirement within our waiver process. We do ask that utilities come in and co-locate as part of this process, and if they can't, they have to specifically state why they can't. So we do have a step embedded within our waiver procedure process. I can also tell you just anecdotally from what we've had conversations with, not just Verizon, but other telecommunication companies, AT&T and T-Mobile, it doesn't seem like there's a need right now at this time for them to go into residential areas. There's nothing that guarantees that. But it's our understanding that AT&T is comfortable with their fiber build out that they have in residential neighborhoods. So we don't anticipate as a city that they're going to have a residential rollout anytime soon. Again, it's not a guarantee. It's just the most information that we have talking with the telecommunication industry. So it is a preference. The city understands that. If we had the ability to co-locate and plan these things proactively, we certainly would. And we've tried working with Verizon and continue to work with other telecommunication companies that come in with the same request.
Go ahead, sir.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Leonard Strickland, and I'm here today representing Verizon. Part of what I'd like to answer some of the questions that were brought up is during our HOA conversation, I was one that actually suggested that our engineering teams take a look at adding a second location because of the concerns that the neighborhood had with their neighborhood beautification project. And as I stated on the call with them, we applaud the efforts that each neighborhood takes to enjoy and beautify the area around them. As part of our regulatory process, we do look for parks, wetlands, nature preserves, etc. This did not come up on any of our regulatory compliance, and the HOA was able to confirm that this is just an endeavor that they took on their own to establish this location. So in order for us to help meet the request that they asked if we could move it from in front of this area, I suggested a second location where we could go in the islands to both the east and the west. Unfortunately, due to builds that are occurring on the adjacent road and also in adjacent neighborhoods, our RF engineers said that would not be a feasible alternative. As part of our continuing effort to try to meet the concerns that the neighborhood had and work with city staff, it was suggested that we move to the north side of the road, and that way we're not directly in front of the parks, and both the property owners vehemently We're opposed to that because.
Move it closer to the house?
Yes, sir, directly across the street. So instead of it being in front of the park, it would be on the property line, just to the north.
Okay.
And the property owners were both against that because they
The
did.
pole just gets closer, yeah.
Well, yes, sir, they just didn't want it in front of their homes
Right,
either.
right.
So we have continued to try to take some steps to help, but unfortunately, we were unable to meet the request that they had put forward. So we went back to the original proposed location. It's also been suggested about the tree trimmings. Our RF engineers have confirmed that there should not be any need to trim any trees based on the location that we've selected. At this location, the way.
Can I ask you a question, Leonard?
Yes, sir.
Just maybe provide a peace of mind for folks. These trees aren't in the public right of way, from what I can gather. They seem to be off of the public
Yes, sir,
right of
they're
way.
offset.
You do not have the legal authority to go in there and trim their trees if
No.
it's not in the public right of way, correct? You
That's
would have to
correct.
seek permission from the HOA or the homeowners to be able to go onto that property and do something.
That is
that
correct.
fair?
Yes, sir.
So I think for folks that are concerned about that, I think that's an important thing to notice, that your trees, the only area that Verizon has the freedom to operate in is the land that is deemed public right of way. Anything outside of that would require permission from the HOA or from you to be in there doing anything. So I just want to provide that as some degree of a peace of mind when it comes to the tree trimming aspect of it. Now, if there's a tree in the public right of way, that might be a different conversation potentially, but.
Verizon still would not trim those trees. We would work with city engineering and public
Gotcha.
works to get authorization to do any of that. But in this case, our engineers have said that due to the location that we've proposed, we'll be able to fully cover all the homes within this area with this single location, and there would not be any requirement for any tree trimming.
Great. Thank you. Any questions for Verizon? I have a couple thoughts, a couple questions, I guess. It does appear that the tower location here is smack dab in the front of one, if not two homes that are looking over at the trees. And I'm curious, was there any consideration given to areas where at least placing the tower would not be in the line of sight of someone's front of their home?
The dot could conceivably, looking to be off. It is what we deemed as a property line break. If you looked at the property lines on the homes in question, that the dot is actually a little bit more to the east than what the representation is on this overlay. So we did try to split that to make sure that it's on the property line, even when it goes across the street, across the curb into the right of way on the south side.
Leonard, was there any consideration given to go to the far west at the end of the cul-de-sac where there's no homes, there's
Yes.
just trees?
Yes, and due to the meandering nature of the roads, it does cause substantial breaks in coverage. And so what we have is as we've mentioned previously, there are two antennas on this, and they are line of sight. So if we were to move all the way down to the west side, because that was one of the proposals, to move clear to the west side, we then effectively lose everybody to the middle section and to the east.
But if you were to put one at the entrance of the neighborhood and one at the far west end, would that suffice?
Well, you can see there is an orange dot further down on Lantern Road. That's an existing location that we've also been proposed to the city.
Mm-hmm.
And so by putting one further out that direction, we do have some overlapping coverage. So there's a list of.
What happens when you have overlapping coverage? Is there some sort of interference or something?
We have interference and signal degradation.
Is that location on Lantern Road proposed or approved?
I believe that one is.
It's a red dot, I don't
proposal.
know what that means.
Yeah.
Is that just in consideration? It's proposed? So that's not an approved site yet? Ah, okay. That's unincorporated, so. It's not a structure. It's just a proposed site, future site that would have to be considered by Hamilton County.
So where I'm going at this is if we approve one at the entrance, that could be moved. It's fluid.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's true.
Well, again, as we've indicated previously, if we move one, we typically end up having to move a series of them. And then it just passes the concerns on to someone else down the road. So again, there were probably 5 different options looked at.
Yeah. The other consideration, and I don't know because it's hard to see from an aerial, but there's a, can we pull this up on the screen? Do we have the technical capabilities of, I don't know if we can do it from here or back there.
That's what you're, right. Yeah, if you, I'm not sure.
No, that's, yeah. We're working on the technology. 1 second. Okay. So, just to be clear from Verizon's perspective, you don't, the red dot that's being considered in the future, you're not willing to consider moving that to the entrance and then moving that blue dot that we're considering now to the far west, back to the trees where there's no homes.
As you can see, due to how immediately entering the neighborhood, it does curve to the south. Again, that's the reason with the coverage models. Those were brought up in the call, and RF engineers did take a look at what could be done about moving to the entrance to the neighborhood along Lantern Road. That was one of the other options that we looked at. I'm not sure if staff wrote that in the report, but that was one of the things that we looked at.
So you did look at an entrance at the, or you looked at a site at the entrance and then moving the tower to the far west?
We looked at this areas here.
Yeah.
And then if you can't really tell, I don't want to mess anything up, but if you zoom in, you can see that there's not any coverage really there, based on the fact that there's 1, maybe 2 homes that would be served by that particular location along Lantern Road. So then you effectively cut off everybody here in this area here. Whereas if we moved all the way to this location, we have the same issue, then we lose everybody in this central part here. And that's again due to the physical characteristics of how that signal propagates. So we did look at many, many different solutions and options here, and unfortunately the one that we kept coming back to was this location where it's currently at.
The only other one sorry, Jeff, the only other one I had is if, Tammy, can you zoom in to the neighborhood further? And I don't want to speak for the neighborhood, but it seems like from a line of sight perspective, is this not a better location right here?
Well,
that's a garage.
That's my house,
Yeah.
just so you know.
But from a location, your garage, you wouldn't see the tower from your.
this line of sight, if you were to draw a line through here, then goes immediately through the dense wood growth, and we lose everything here to the west side.
So what, if we back out again, sorry, Tammy, I know we're the exercise here, but then what's the purpose of the one on Lantern Road? Because I'm really struggling with the coverage overlay when we have trees. I mean, it seems like the technology doesn't do what it should do or isn't good enough, and so we're having to move these towers around in order to overcompensate for trees, which are going to grow, by the way.
Or even curvilinear roads.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really struggling.
On the roads and thoroughfares, those are for vehicle traffic and people in motion traveling north and south on the road. When we get into the residential areas, it's for mobile cellular use, but then also a new service that Verizon has called 5G Home, which offers residents another opportunity, another option as far as broadband services. And so that's, again, based on the physical characteristics of how this signal works. It does have to have pretty clear lines of sight. And so when we look at the facility that we're proposing into Hamilton County, that's going to be along Lantern Road. That's, again, for persons traveling north and south along that stretch of the road. And again, moving it up into this location here, we lose everything. We need to cover more than just
Explain
two
that
homes.
to me, because I don't, that's the part where you lose me. Moving that that tower up to the entrance, how do you lose everything?
It's actually tied in. If we look at these as an overall, it's all part of a comprehensive network of each structure supporting an additional structure. So that's part of our RF propagation studies that our engineers will have to look at. So that's why we've mentioned that if we move one, it has a domino effect to all the other ones in the area. And so in regards to this particular site, by moving this proposed site north to this intersection, we effectively don't get anything out of it.
What do you mean you don't
There's
get
one
anything?
home for our home services. So we're basically just covering one location.
But
and that
isn't
would be
it
this
then
house right here.
allowing you to move that dot further to the west and getting that whole neighborhood?
No, sir, because then what'll happen is if you, I know this is an aerial overlay based on the view,
Sure.
but then we start losing, because if we put it either on either one of these homes here, we then effectively lose this cluster of homes here and this cluster of homes to the south. And by moving it all the way to the west, we again start cutting off the middle section of the neighborhood.
So what if you go here, you get that, and I was speaking with the residents, but I'm trying to compromise, if you were here, it gets you straight shot down here, if you go to the end, it gets you straight shot in there. And I don't care about this now, I'm not worried about it.
Well, then this again ties into two small cell locations that I'm more than happy to take back to our RF engineers and have them take a look at that, if that's a possible scenario that the board would be willing to entertain.
From my perspective, that's the least intrusive in terms of.
So just so I'm clear, Jeff, it's one at the entrance or close to the entrance?
It would have to be, look, in an effort to try to hit their line of sight, which I don't fully understand, but yes, somewhere in that, which would be between two homes, no one across the street. We give them a line of sight down into the curve, like all those homes would then be picked up.
But then
by appearance.
the other tower would be moved all the way to the west?
It would have to go to the end of the neighborhood, yes, which is one of the others. Again, not speaking for the residents, but in an effort to try to find compromise,
Right.
it takes it out of the view of the majority of the homeowners, direct line of sight, and it still appears to provide coverage, notwithstanding that I'm not worried about the one on Lantern Road at this time.
Is that something you're willing to look at?
I'm more than happy to take this back.
All right.
I think there are homes across from where your cursor is pointing right now.
Okay.
There is a home there. There's a large tree and a section of woods, but there is a home. And there's two homes, obviously, that this would sit right between.
Yeah,
Yeah, but there, I don't think,
I'm not you live there, I don't, clearly.
but there's no driveway,
I don't see a
Rhonda,
driveway
on any of that curve. Yes, ma'am?
I think it's a public utility right away behind, are you talking about the Norris's?
It's Vivia's here that,
Oh, in the
I guess is the
Yeah.
first one. I thought it was by that tree.
Yeah, there's no driveway anywhere
Yeah.
from here
right.
all the way down to here, so there's no house on this side. Then it's just a matter of placement here where these folks want to see if it's outside, and these folks want to see if there's a garage right here. So, to Jeff's point, if located there, it shouldn't have an adverse impact on any homework, but it's up to Verizon as to whether or not that's a possibility. But I hope Verizon recognizes the fact that these neighbors are willing to try to identify solutions and are not trying to shut this down completely, but are absolutely trying to come up with something that works for the entire neighborhood. Yes, ma'am?
Yeah, I have a question. With what Verizon is doing with the towers, the signal is for cell phones, correct?
And
Not-
home.
I'm sorry.
And a home opportunity, is what he just described.
Okay, so you're looking to provide it to the homes as well?
That's correct.
Okay, I was gonna say, because most residents have providers in their home that they're doing their Wi-Fi throughout their home and to some portion outside their home. So unless we all switch to Verizon, which Verizon is not very big here, which depending on where you go, I'm ready to fight Verizon. I've got all the time necessary. So you're trying to get it in people's homes because their cell phones are generally getting the signal from their home service.
Well, this is going to be part of both a wireless service for handheld users, et cetera, your cell phones, your laptops, your tablets, and then it's also part of our offering for additional broadband services. So then it gives you options as part of the competitive nature. You can use AT&T's UVerse, or you can use Comcast, Xfinity, MetroNet, or Verizon services.
I do want to make sure, ma'am, and I completely understand your concern. We've been preempted by state law and by federal law around the questions of why to allow this to occur. We have no consideration of that at this board. What we do have the opportunity to do is try to protect the homeowners, the individual homeowners' rights, and not have their home devalued disproportionately. And so that's what we got to focus on here is what is a reasonable burden that a homeowner can take on for the betterment of technology. And that's really where we try to work through compromises and identify solutions. I think what I've heard today, and I hope Verizon understands, the current location as proposed and I don't want to speak for the whole board, but from my perspective, is not suitable. It adversely impacts individual homeowners disproportionately for this neighborhood. But we're willing to work with you to try to find an additional compromise. And I know it's frustrating for you because it's engineering by committee, which I can only imagine is difficult. But I think you've seen today, we've already approved the vast majority of these towers. So in the spirit of that collaboration, I'd ask for you to table this, look at these other alternative locations, and reconsider at a different time. So I will make a motion to table this, this cell tower placement. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jeff. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Folks, Mackenzie, stay in touch with Mackenzie or Tammy. They will make sure that you guys are kept up to speed as Verizon considers these alternatives.
And I want to make a note, our neighborhood, we did a poll. It was vehemently denied to put 2 locations in our neighborhood for lots of reasons.
Yeah.
It's just.
I appreciate that. Understand that we're going to balance, we're going to weigh all of those options and try to consider the best solution for everyone. And that may make everyone on both sides unhappy or some combination. So we'll work through that. But at least for now, let's try to go back and identify if there's a solution that doesn't adversely impact individual homeowners disproportionately in your neighborhood. That's the goal that we're trying to accomplish. So thank you for coming out this morning. And we will stay in touch with you and communicate with you along the process. Thank you. Moving on to our final neighborhood consideration is Harrison Woods. Tammy?
Tammy Houston, Assistant Engineer. Verizon Wireless has submitted for 2 locations, one actual permit, one is just a proposed location in Harrison Woods. We spoke with the residents and the HOA back in November and again in July. This actually did come before you back in November of 2020. It was tabled at that time. At that time, both of the locations were presented as permits. The conversations with the HOA, they are against the structures being proposed within their neighborhood. There was a couple of suggestions on some possible relocations. They had suggested the one at address 13667 Acadia Place to be moved outside of the subdivision and put onto Connerville Parkway near Harrison Park. Verizon stated they would not be able to do that as it would be moved away from the coverage objective. The location at 8532 Ardennes Drive, there was a suggestion to move it to the intersection of Acadia Place and Ardennes Drive. Verizon stated that by moving that, they would not get the coverage down Ardennes Drive as they are, what their objective is. So the HOA is not in agreement with either of these locations, but they did state that if they are approved, that they would prefer to have them with no lights on either of them. Verizon is here to answer any questions.
So just to sum that up quickly, we were not happy with these locations. We proposed other locations. Verizon said no to those locations, and now we're back to the original.
The
Is that fair?
HOA's made some suggestions. It was just tabled at the other, in the November meeting. I do not recall.
We tabled it,
Yes.
but no action has occurred since that time.
We've met with the Verizon has met with the HOA again back in July. And the same conversations were had, the same suggestions on the relocations, one moving to Harrison Park, and the other one to be moved to the intersection. Verizon stated that by moving both of those locations to those proposed locations, they would not be able to get the coverage objective that they are looking for.
I do recall this neighborhood, and I recall there being no good options here. Any questions? First, I should ask, is there anyone here from Harrison Woods? Were any residents that were individually impacted reach out to you, Tammy, or did you?
They did not. It was just the HOAs. We did not receive any comments from any of the residents.
Jeff and Jason, any questions or comments?
One on 13667, is there an option to move to the right of the board in between the two garages?
Oh, I see.
Instead of for that window?
Right. Just across the street.
Yeah, where there's like, looks like 3 cars and maybe a basketball goal or something there.
Yeah. Do you see what he's talking about, Tammy?
Right, yeah, just across the street. That'd be something Verizon would need to take a look at.
Consider that one at least.
When, just, it looks like there's a,
There's a tree right there.
I don't know what those look, maybe trash bins or something in that area.
Leonard, what is the take on Verizon on being located in parks?
I'm sorry.
Parks, locations in parks, are you opposed to those, or
No, we are
city
not.
parks? Okay.
No, we are not opposed to park locations. That's actually part of our coverage objectives, are parks and places where people will congregate.
Is there, I know Harrison Thompson Park is right behind here, to the north. I don't know if we talked about this or not, but is that,
That was one of the things that was brought up about relocating up to the park to the north, and we could not serve Harrison Woods due to the tree line. That's along the property lines there. And the coverage for this particular small area is, again, the facility in the orange at the north there is shooting down Acadia Place, and then the opposing facility is covering the bend in the road as far, and as well as the cul-de-sac to the north.
and I know we probably talked about this, Leonard, but on Ardennes Drive, if you took the Arcadia 13667 and brought it down to Ardennes on the corner, where it's all garages basically, and it shoots north, is there a issue with that? Because on that corner, you basically just have a convergence of garages, it seems like.
We had comment on this because that was part of what was proposed, and our RF engineers stated that there would be some EME interference generated from the one to the east on Ardennes Drive, because they're in too close a proximity to each other to shoot north and have all of them shoot north. up into the cul-de-sacs. So you're speaking about relocating
13667.
this one down to
Yeah.
Arden's Drive? Yes, sir. So these two would be in conflict.
So how is it that under federal law, these towers can be as close as 50 feet? Is it because you're on a different frequency than AT&T, or?
Yes, and that was actually part of the questions that came up previously that I didn't address, is that it did come up in regards to co-location. Verizon is not opposed to co-location. Actually, all of our structures are meant to house what we call one additional technology. That could be a new radio spectrum, or it could be a customer. What we find is not all carriers can be in close proximity to each other because of carrier separation. And in particular, AT&T and Verizon is one of those carriers. Since we operate very similar equipment and very close bandwidth, we don't co-locate on each other's facilities due to that spectrum interference.
Gotcha.
But we can house an additional technology, and what you will see around the city of Fishers and many locations is that dual technology at play. We'll have our 4G facility. We'll also have our 5G millimeter wave, ultra wideband as we call it, having the same facility. And next year, we'll start our rollout of our nationwide 5G mid-band spectrum as well. So there'll be some radio ads occurring.
How do you determine which tree is going to be a problem?
That is done by our RF engineers and on-site field studies. So our RF engineers and our architectural and design engineers will go out to locations and they take a look at what's in that area. We also provide 4-directional line of sight photos. So then that way that can be fed into our databases, and they take a look at that spectrum performance and how that's going to work. So that's how they make the determinations on what trees or buildings or signs or whatever it may be are going to cause issues.
Any other questions for Verizon?
So 13667, consideration move to the right, in the cul-de-sac in between those two garages.
Verizon's willing to take that back and get an answer to that question.
And then 8532 is really problematic.
I'm just not, I can't wrap my head around the location that's currently proposed is essentially at a tree or under a tree or by a tree. I mean, it is literally on top of a tree. And the street is tree lined. So, Leonard, I can't fathom why, if you can put it there and you can still hit the street, why you can't go to the park and it work. I'm just telling you right now, it doesn't make sense.
No, I appreciate that. And part of the due diligence that I'll bring back to you in regards to 13667 is I'll get an RF report for you to answer some of those
That'd be great.
questions.
Okay.
I think that'd be beneficial.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, well, let's table these at Harrison Woods for the time being and bring back that report.
Is there a suggestion with 8532?
Not at the moment. I mean, it's really problematic. And I don't know that, I mean, anywhere along that road is gonna be problematic from what I can see. It's just so dense with homes. I don't know that there is. Tammy, maybe we could take a closer look, because these aerials are, I mean, I'm trying my best to figure out how it doesn't impact the home here, but there's just so many homes, such a small area. That might be the best location, I don't know, but maybe we could take a closer look at that. So let's just table both of these, bring them back at our next meeting. Is there a motion to table?
Motion to table.
Motion by Jeff, is there a second? Second by Jason, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. I believe that's it for the agenda. Are there any additional items, Chris?
Nope.
Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion adjourned.
Motion by Jeff, is there a second? Second by Jason, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion adjourned, thank you, meeting adjourned.